Executive Vice President Stella Li of BYD, China's largest automaker, was interviewed recently, and she made a number of very important statements about Tesla. First, she says China is willing to share key technologies in electric vehicles and autonomous driving with foreign companies, despite trade tensions with the US and Europe. Second, she said BYD needs to work together with Tesla to make the industry change, and that Tesla and BYD have a common enemy in the internal combustion engine. She also clarified their plans, whether they'll build auto factories in the US and Mexico. And so we've got Hans Nelson joining us. Hans has been following this story very closely with BYD and their attempts at their plans to put God's Eye, which is their autonomous capability, their plans to build factories, and their plans to maybe partner with other companies. Welcome, Hans.
Thanks for having me, Herbert. This is a very interesting and complex topic.
It's an important one, right? Because BYD is one of the largest automakers. They're very successful in China, whether they're profitable or not, but they're selling like crazy, multiple vehicle segments, and then they're going global. And so now they announced with God's Eye, they're going to install some sort of ADAS in all of their car segments, including the ones that are small. So this is Stella Li, and she's actually they call her senior vice president in China, executive vice president in China for BYD, but she's the president of the US division for BYD. And so she said this in an interview: China is more open to foreign business than the West. BYD pledges to work with rival Tesla to combat petrol cars. And then it's this paragraph down here, which she said China, so she didn't say BYD, but China is willing to share key technologies in EVs and autonomous driving with foreign companies despite trade tensions. What did you take about this particular statement before we go to the rest of her comments?
Yeah, there's a reason that this is the dynamic that's going on. You have to have eyes wide open when you hear statements like this from companies from China, because I know that you, Herbert, have had Michael Dunn on your show as well, and then Farzad and I have had a couple of interviews with him. And when you look at the history of these American car companies doing business with China, in China, what you realize is that they love to talk about win-win business with American companies. But when they say win-win, they take us for being naive fools, which we often are. And what they are thinking is, hey, this is a win-win business strategy for us. China will win twice, and the American company will lose. So the general playbook that they use here is they want to do a partnership with an American company, and they want to learn everything from the American company. They want to extract all of the intellectual property that's necessary, and the experience necessary to where they can then replicate that technology on their own. And once they have learned all that they have learned and acquired everything that they feel like they needed to acquire, then there will be a shift in the relationship. They are very, very conscious of leverage in partnerships, and they will act like the weaker partner, which they are from a technological standpoint, as they enter into a relationship like this. But they have a long-term strategy and plan to flip the tables of that leverage over the long term. And once they have done that, the host company that they used to begin with will end up feeling the brunt of very fierce competition and changing political dynamics within the company. So we've seen this, for example, with all of the Western automakers made a lot of money in China for a long time when they first got started there, whether it was GM, whether it was Mercedes, Volkswagen, all of these Western brands came into China. The Chinese offered up their market, and it was just irresistible to these companies. But they had to do these joint ventures with Chinese companies, and these Chinese companies learned everything about how to make cars from these Western automakers, and they built up their local supply chain. And now what you see is that every single one of those Western car companies has faced fierce competition from other, like the the intellectual property that they had in China didn't stay confined to that one company that they're in a joint venture with. That person that they're in a joint venture with is used to then transfer that knowledge and information to the entire competitive ecosystem in China. And then you find yourself competing with 100 other companies. Um, and they've all, like, the profitability in China for all of these companies has gone to almost zero or less than zero, and people are having to pull back. And so the thing that was for a short time the most profitable business segment in their entire companies is now actually something where they're losing money year on year. And that was not an accident. That was the plan from the get-go for this business relationship. And so they understand that we like short-term profits, and they use these carrots to lure us into a trap to then be able to outcompete us in the long run in technologies that they view are strategically important for the country. So I am 0% surprised that a Chinese company wants to do a partnership like this with Tesla. Tesla's obviously got the best advanced driver assistance technology. Um, and this is going to make the calculus for Elon very, very interesting, because they know what it is that Tesla and Elon are trying to do. This language is specifically meant to appeal to Elon. Let's go ahead and try to take gas cars down. Let's put EVs against gas cars. It does align with the mission in those ways, but Elon has to know that over the long term, they're definitely going to try to, like, any technology partnership that they have with BYD, expect all of that IP then to get transferred to every other Chinese automaker in relatively short order, and to be facing fierce competition from them all over the globe. And so does he want to enter into a partnership like that? Maybe, maybe not. The thing that Elon has going for him is that they are continuing to iterate rapidly um, across the entire business. And so their pace, Elon doesn't believe in moats. He says the only real moat is pace of innovation. And so as long as they continue to maintain that culture and that ethos, they should be able to at least keep pace with, if not stay ahead of, all of this competition that they would face from China. And that's just not the case for, the legacy automakers, that
Yeah.
they didn't have a pace of innovation. Like, they had this IP that they had built up over
Yeah.
many, many decades. And once the Chinese automakers understood how to do what they do, they weren't changing what they do to improve it fast enough to stay ahead. So that's it. It's a very interesting and very complex set of dynamics at play.
Yeah, I think what's happening here is BYD wants to get into the US, and they know that there's trade tensions. They know that US
Hmm.
won't let them in. And so they're saying, hey, we're willing, China's willing to share key technologies in EVs and autonomous driving with foreign companies. So they're saying, maybe partner with us, get our tech, get into, get us into the US. Um, our common enemy is the internal combustion engine. We need to work together. When she's talking about, she pledged to work with rival Tesla to combat petrol cars, while insisting that Beijing was more open to foreign business than the West is. I don't know if that's also potentially
Well,
a threat,
yeah, I
but it's
think that
also,
that statement is a reference to Chinese companies invite Western companies into the
yeah,
Chinese market more often than
the other,
Western
right.
countries invite Chinese companies into the Western markets. But that's because we've observed this exact dynamic, and we understand that,
Yeah.
most of the time partnerships with these Chinese companies do not work out as win-win partnerships over the long term, that these are strategic partnerships that they view through a very anti-competitive lens over the long run, and that they are trying
Yeah.
to extract value um, at our expense in ways that are not conducive to free trade. They're not conducive to free markets. And
Yeah.
they can try to make it sound like they're this innocent entity in all this that's more more virtuous than Western companies. But it's a ploy. That's not real. It's not true.
Well,
And
yeah, so
people need
I
to be
guess this
aware.
is a good statement. The government will support you. They'll work with you to allow any technology to be realized. Yeah, I get what you're saying, but the concern would be that they would go completely opposite and just shut out foreign companies that come to China. They're still trying to negotiate here. Um, so that last month they introduced their BYD introduced their version of smart driving functions called God's Eye. We've covered that at length. It's going to be made available no cost to most of its models, but it's very complicated. It's like three different kinds of suites, depending on the three different segments of cars: the low cost, the middle cost, and the high premium cars. It will have LiDAR. They're going to cover the cost of these multiple radars and sensors. Um,
Yeah, I don't think they have the technical vision or instincts that Elon has to know which of these things is going to work or not. And so they're just going to try anything and everything, and whatever works the best they'll move forward with. So, this could evolve, and if they can get vision to really work well, maybe they'll abandon all of these other things. They're, this is much more of a spray and pray shotgun
yeah,
approach to let's try everything, and whatever works the
yeah.
best, then we'll double down on that in the future.
Yeah, people are saying, "Oh my God, they're leaders now in self-driving." No, what this was recognizing that if they don't say that they have some sort of ADAS system, then it's table stakes. All cars need to have advanced ADAS, and now that they say, "Okay, we're going to have it," but it's nowhere. There's no proof here that in any way that this has solved autonomous driving at all. Um, yeah, so that's their point that she made, and then the other one was that this is her plans. So she confirmed that BYD had no plans to introduce electric vehicles in the US, right? Which of course, now that Trump has won, she knows that the policy is to not let right cars made in Mexico to just go in without tariffs. In fact, they've implemented the tariffs in Mexico and Canada. So that's why BYD had made no decision has been made on BYD's plans to build a plant in Mexico. They were about to, then they pulled off, and similar to what Tesla did. She said she was not concerned about a global slowdown in the EV transition as a result of Trump's policies. So obviously, it's still very much electric vehicles is here to stay. Why are people still choosing the EV? Because it's a better car, it's a smarter car, it's higher quality. So that's good to hear that. Um, Anything here that you thought was surprising?
No, not at all. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the position that I expect the Chinese automakers and BYD specifically to take. BYD is the largest of the EV manufacturers in China, which means it's the most in bed with the CCP. I
Hmm.
think the subtext that this tells you is that the CCP views Tesla's ride hailing technology as, at, if not superior, at least unique and uniquely valuable. And so they want to be able to keep as close of an eye on it as possible, incorporate it as much as possible, so that they can learn how to replicate this domestically in China. And just understanding the way the art of war thought process in business that you know the CCP and Chinese industry has, this is right on brand for what I would expect from them. And like I said, that's why I would caution Elon and Tesla to enter into these negotiations with eyes wide open on all of these dimensions, which I'm sure that they do. Like, Tom
Hmm.
Zhu, Grace Tao, they understand these things very well. This is not going to be surprise or news to Elon or Tesla management. But this is something that I think a lot of the Tesla community and just the broader Western consumers don't understand about the dynamics of these business relationships.
I do think that BYD is willing to partner with Tesla. They already are partners for batteries. And I think that they're just trying to figure out, how do I get into the US? How do I go global if I partner with you, Tesla? But China has allowed Tesla to release full self-driving, and it is being well received by the Chinese testers and the experts out there. They're being shocked at how good it is. For a year or two now, we kept hearing everybody saying, don't underestimate the Chinese autonomy. They're so far ahead of Tesla. Yeah, do not underestimate them. But no, they're not that far ahead of Tesla. We're seeing over and over again people saying, hey, I've compared it directly with
It's
Huawei. I've
funny that,
compared it. Yeah.
there's such a big overlap between the people that all think that Tesla is doing the wrong thing because they don't have LiDAR and the people that think China is ahead in full
Yeah.
self-driving. It's
Yeah.
because they believe in LiDAR and China's
Yeah.
doing more stuff with LiDAR. And so,
And they're trying to get out of it too. That's the thing, though, right?
yeah.
We keep hearing one company after another, including Huawei, by the way.
Mhm.
They just announced 6 months ago that they're moving to neural nets, and many companies are dumping lidar. But people still think, okay, so let's
Self-driving is
yeah,
an intelligence problem. It has always been an intelligence
yeah,
problem and it will always be an intelligence problem. So if you have the intelligence to drive, do you need
mm,
laser beams that shoot out of your eyes and come back to tell you exactly where all the things are when you drive? I don't think
yeah,
so. So, that's like really as simple as it comes down to.
yeah,
And more people will come to realize this over time. I think there are some specific scenarios where if you can get the lidar cheap enough on the car, like
sure,
it is hard as a person to park in really tight parking
yeah,
places.
yeah,
And so if you can use it as a supplement to do
right.
parking, I think that's like the best use case for the technology. I don't think it's necessary for 99% of driving in any way, shape, or form. And because of that, it's always just going to be more expensive than just using cameras and intelligence.
So this is what obviously the experts here. You got it says here, these Chinese folks were once critics of Tesla, but after FSD, full self driving, began operating in China, they conducted meticulous tests and became full of praise for Tesla's active safety features. By analyzing every frame of video footage, they found that Tesla's FSD not only has extremely low reaction latency, but is also accurate and rational. They gradually increased the difficulty of their tests at night with car beams, high beam shining directly at it under powerful spotlight conditions. Tesla could still promptly detect a simulated pedestrian suddenly darting out from behind an obstacle. The final surprise came when, in a nighttime backlit environment, they placed a 20 centimeter tall wild vegetable on the road to test FSC, and FSC still handled it safely. So this is now people. I'm gonna turn off the sound here, but basically this is like a very long video of this guy who was such a critic of vision only and now became a convert. What you see behind there is the vegetation, small little little vegetation like that little bush, and the car was able to detect it and be able to figure this out. This is them testing it, and the high beams. Here's another. Yeah. And you can hear the excitement. So that's one example. And then you've got, very many videos. You got this video here of uh, the treacherous roads. Tesla FSD takes on this lousy shoe road, legendary 9 bends, 18 curves, flawless precision. So this is where really it's shocking everybody. It's not only during the city where there's busy with scooters, pedestrians, just craziness going on. It's doing really well. But more importantly, it's in these mountain roads, these unmarked roads. This is the part that people are very freaked out. And if you listen to the guys, they're just freaking out. You can hear the excitement. Yeah, it's just they're shocked that they can do this so well, these kinds of roads. Yeah, even like that, right? There's cars parked
Yep.
there and able to do that, right? The excitement for them, because remember, this is the first time many people in China are experiencing full self-driving like we have here in the US for the last year. It's the first time they're seeing it, and they're realizing this is good stuff. It works. So sentiment
It's
has
so
changed. What have
exciting.
you
Yeah.
heard? What have you heard so far? Yeah.
I mean, what we've watched here, on X is the extent of what I've heard, but it is so exciting that this technology is rolling out, that it's working well. There were a lot of question marks around Tesla's ability to do this. And once again, Tesla AI proves the skeptics and the doubters wrong. And even I just didn't know. I wasn't confident that they wouldn't be able to roll it out. I do think that there's questions about, politically in China, if Tesla doesn't want to work with someone like BYD, how long will the Chinese government allow them to operate FSD domestically in the
There you go.
country?
I think you just named it right there.
Those kinds of
Yeah.
things.
There's a quid pro quo for letting
Yes.
Tesla to go FSD into
Yep.
China. They said, okay, we're concerned about privacy. You need to figure out how you're going to, keep the information in
Hmm.
China. That there's something there but they got the regulatory approval.
Yep.
There's probably a quid pro quo, meaning
Oh,
to say that
the
that we
political
said at the very beginning,
machinations
right?
going on here, yeah,
Yeah.
have got to be intense.
Some
And so
companies in the
those kinds
US.
of
Yeah.
things, it's hard to handicap how that will play out over time. But yeah, the one thing that I didn't doubt was Tesla's technical capability to make this work in China. Is just going to take more time and creativity, based on the constraints that people had. So that's where I was a little bit surprised at the upside is that they were able to make this work so fast. So that I'm just once again so impressed by Tesla's
Yeah.
AI team, that not only were they able to accomplish it, but they were able to accomplish it very, very quickly and to a very high level of quality.
Yeah.
And so you just have to give it to them. And it's another
It's only going to
huge.
get better from here. Yeah, and
Oh
it's only
yeah,
been a week. And of course, it's still not reading some Chinese signs. It's still going into bus lanes. It's still being too
it's not going to be
cautious.
perfect, but
Yeah.
their ability to roll it out at this level so quickly should give people high confidence that they will work down that punch list of things that are bugs and flaws in the system. um it's all
Yeah.
going to happen. Like, I feel this makes me more confident, even as someone who lives in the United States, that we're still going to continue to see rapid progress on FSD here and everywhere. Like, this is just proving the chops of the Tesla AI team to solve whatever the bottleneck is this week, that they seem to be able to solve it pretty quickly. And there are no challenges that we haven't seen solved, that they've said, okay, here's the thing that we're going to do, and then they do it.
Yeah.
That I can think of off the top of my head. So, like, we are just rapidly moving into this future of Tesla robo taxis, and I'm here for it. I'm stoked.
This was a big, big deal that they were allowed to do FSC in China because, as we've kind of been talking about, it's one thing to show, you've been saying, the technology that they were able to solve the AI, but it's the other thing about the political maneuvering. The political maneuvering that Elon had to do to be able to have a gig of Shanghai. And if he didn't have a gig of Shanghai, look at all these
A
tariff wars
wholly
that are happening
owned
here.
Giga Shanghai.
There's no tariff war issue to Tesla selling their cars in China, and they continue to sell cars in China. One of the biggest, the point that what was his name? The biggest Tesla short at one point, um,
Jim
Channels,
Chanos.
Jim Channels.
Yeah.
His number one biggest point when he went on TV and he debated, said, "I'm going to short Tesla." He said, "At any moment, China, it was like, makes up 50% of their sales, could just turn around and stop it." It hadn't happened yet. And that's why the
Well,
comments we're
and
hearing
the
from,
reason that it hasn't happened yet is because Tesla understands that if you're doing business in China, it's always has been and always will be about leverage and what you bring to the table. And
they
so
got
he
leverage. Yeah.
understands how to
Yeah.
maintain that position and keep the leverage between the CCP and Tesla at,
Yeah.
relatively neutral. And so, you know,
Yeah. So that he
it seems
goes,
like
okay,
they've done well so far. Hopefully that can continue,
I've got
indefinitely,
the
and not
EV
just
tech,
into the future. Yeah.
and China wants to become an EV global leader. Follow us, let us in there. And that's what happened. They let them in there. They built up the supply chain that supplies Tesla. All of these companies formed in China. They're successful. Many of them die, of course, because it's a bloodbath there. But now they're going global. You got BYD, being helped. Now you want to become a leader in autonomous tech. Who's the leader? Tesla. Let Tesla in. Let them share that technology. Partner with
And
some
they will be the
companies.
leader, FSD is not the only bleeding edge technology that Tesla is developing. They're also developing Optimus. Optimus is going to be of huge importance to the CCP. So there's going to be continued leverage there as well.
Yeah.
And then Elon always has the leverage of SpaceX and Starlink. And I'm not going to get into how hugely strategic those assets are in all of these political calculations as well. But yeah,
that's
Elon is a very, very, I mean, I'll just briefly say that SpaceX and Starlink are Elon's most underappreciated strategic assets in negotiations, period. With the world, with the United States government, with his relationships politically with leaders in China, other countries that really don't like Elon right now. Like Starlink is a trump card that works for a lot of things. And then just think about the fact that SpaceX lofts 90% of all mass that goes to orbit right now. And if air superiority was the most strategic battlefield of the 20th century, space superiority is the most strategic advantage in the next. And the ability, especially when Starship gets to launch, the ability for them to put orders of magnitude more mass into orbit in a couple of days than anyone else combined means that SpaceX is one of the single most important military strategic assets in the world, period, bar none.
I just did a show with Phil Bissell, who used to be the VP at Rivian, electric car maker. He's brilliant. He did a show and he just talked about how Starlink is going to be game changer for the bots, and that allows them to have ubiquitous network connection. And then how when you have ubiquitous network connections, he listed out a lot of things that you can do. Not only have memory, shared memory, group actions, but just the whole thing about how, you can basically having swarms of bots all coordinated, working together, instant latency kind of thing.
Full on Skynet.
Let's call it Skynet. That's a great name. But yeah, so it's a really good point that you're making. There's reasons why China needs to have Elon as part of it, and they need to give Elon what he needs, but then there's a quid pro quo, dude. And maybe it's BYD, maybe it's another company, but I do think that there will be something was given back to a Chinese car company to be able to have some of this tech. Yeah. Ooh, big show. BYD, very important. Thank you so much, Hans. Your analysis is always top notch, and really appreciate you so much. Follow him on his YouTube channel. And if you are going to buy a Tesla, I'll put up his link. You can save up to $2,500 and use his referral link. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good one, Herbert.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.